I'm just going to start. And you guys, I pretty much just talk and paint. So just ask any questions that you want while we're painting. I'll just try and talk and say what I'm thinking about as I'm painting it. Go ahead and put your hands up the way. I love doing these where we have some interesting hands or poses, but they're not possible to hold for the whole time. So what I'll do is, like at this stage, when I just kind of sketch and block it in, I have the model hold the hands up, and then as I get into painting areas, I'll have them put them down and rest them as they get tired, and then put them back up when I paint them. So that happens a lot with very complicated paintings, where I have very complicated poses. I'll even really just draw everything out in charcoal if it's very hard to hold, and then just do piece by piece. All right, so that's great. So now I'm going to just squint down and do all my just quick looking at darkest dark, lightest light. In my mind, I'm thinking, what do I want to go for in this? I'll hold my hands up and look at the composition. It's a fairly simple composition, so that's not too much to worry about. So I'm thinking in my mind, what do I want the final painting to look like? There's like 1,000 possible ways that you could do this painting. You could go for high key, go for more for the color. You go for more drama of the light and really push the light so that they're very, very chiaroscuro. There's so many ways, and Mr. Parks would say when we would put our first stroke down, he'd say, have you thought about, is this about color, is this about value, is this what's your center of interest, what's your lightest light, darkest dark? If you can't answer that when you're putting your first stroke down, then you're just leaving it to chance, And he said, and there's a chance, 1 in a million chance that you'll get that right. He said, but there's a gazillion more that you probably, of wrong ways to do it. So you have to have that really a clear picture in your mind of what you're going for. So that's a lot of times in my studio when we're setting it up and stuff, I really take a long time in the beginning just kind of thinking things out. Sometimes as I sketch it out, I'm also just kind of using that as a delaying tactic so the model doesn't think, God, I'm just sitting here and they're just staring at me. It looks like you're kind of doing something, but you're really not. You're still just thinking about it, analyzing it, and thinking about what are you gonna paint. All right, so I'm going to just very vaguely sketch this in here so that I have my kind of proportions. And one thing about the distance that you're standing too, as you're setting this up, I was thinking about the size that I'm doing this one. And I'm standing a certain distance from this because I know I want to get the hands in here and I want to get down to this waist. So if you were to stand next to this, you would see that this is approximately sight size that I'm seeing. And sight size means that, say I were to get the canvas exactly level with the model, I could just go straight across and draw a line from her head up to the top of her head, a line from her chin to here, and it would pretty much come out like this. Now if I was doing a full-size portrait of her, I would be really close, as close as I could, so you wouldn't be able to get exactly sight size for a life-size head, but you'd be very close, so that you can see the amount of details. This is because that is what your natural tendency will be, now you don't have to be exactly sight size, some people do really do it sight size and actually measure out onto their canvas. As long as you're close, you'll be, but if you'll really be fighting it, if you're standing way back and you're trying to do a life-size head, or if you're standing real close and you're trying to do a very small painting or something, your natural tendency, so you'll find yourself like growing, the picture, or if you're standing far away, your tendency will keep wanting, because your natural eye wants to make things basically sight size. Now this one I really love. We use these green cloth and the dark background and the way I'm doing the lighting. I'm really interested in these large value patterns. I think are what's going to be, like Kevin was talking about when you walk into a museum, and what do you see in the room? It's that big shapes and patterns of exciting designs. That's the first thing that you see that you're drawn to. And the details and the other stuff, even what it is it a landscape or a portrait, that kind of comes later, your first almost unconscious reaction. So you want to be very conscious of those right from the beginning to make sure I want some of this stuff, this green, to tie down into this, to the side of the canvas. I'm just thinking about that while I'm blocking that in here. There are so many ways to start. Sometimes it's a very complex painting with many figures in it, and so I will take my time and really draw it out in charcoal. Other times it's very simple like this, so I'm just doing a very vague lay-in just to make sure that I kind of don't get the head too large, or get what in that I want. Other times it's so simple, like on portraits and stuff, where they pretty much are going to fit in there, that I don't even draw it out at all. I'll just go right into the painting one area and then on to the next. That approach will really depend on what your strategy is, how complex the painting is. Now, why would you choose to do... Now, as your hands get tired, just put them down your lap, rest them for a while, and then put them back up. So just don't, I'll forget, so just don't put yourself through stress or anything like that. Yeah.
So before you do your stroke,
Mm-hmm.
you've made a decision about what it's about?
Yes.
And what is your decision?
Well, this one I'm going more, there is some interesting color patterns, but it's not going to be a high key, very impressionistic color one. So I'm going to go full value. I'm going to go for the drama of this light. So I'm going to really squint down, and I'm going to really separate the shadow pattern into the shadow and simplify that, and then really go for this light pattern so that it really looks like lit. So it's going to be more about the value than about the color. There's going to be color in there. Every painting is going to be a combination of those two. It's just this one will go more towards the drama of the light. Now, why is that? That's because if you're going for the color, if you look on your palette or as you mix up colors, the brightest colors are in the middle range. As you add a lot of white to them, they start to weaken. As you get darker and blacker, you don't see them as colorful. So if you're doing something and it's about the color, then that's where you need your range to be. And so you might say then I'm going to squash my range so that my lightest lights, like if you look at really impressionistic paintings, if you look at something that's white and you think, wow, that's really white, like look at Soroy or something on Kids on the Beach, and you think, wow, that's very white. But if you actually were to hold up a piece of white paper next to it, you'd realize, wow, that's actually a couple values darker than white, because he wants to retain all that color in that thing. And the same thing with the shadows. If there's something really black up there, usually it's just going to be one little accent, so that he gets lots of air into the shadows. Now, if you look at something like Rembrandt, it's the opposite. The lights are really light, and the shadows are really dark, and so it gives you more of a dramatic effect of the light rather than the color. And those are just decisions that you make. They're not set in stone, like Dan was saying about the relativity of colors. Now, the way to think about that with the relativity, you hear that a lot of people say that values, colors are relative. Okay? That was very confusing to me in art school. Because I thought there was just one right color or value for something. And I'd say, well, we should all be able to agree on that. But think of it this way. Think of it like on this setup here. If I were to, say, put one of those lights or a lamp behind her in the scene here, and so it was showing, right now my lightest light is on her hair, okay? So that's going to, when I look at my palette, I'm looking at my lightest light and darkest dark. This is the range I have to paint with. So I'm saying, okay, the hair maybe a half a value, the really lightest light above white. So I'm thinking about when I mix that, I would go half a value above white. Now say we add that lamp in there. Then when I squint down at the scene, that lamp would be so light that now that would be the lightest light. And this on the hair, and this is way in the background, so it's not even affecting the way she is right now. On the palette, we've got titanium white, cadmium yellow light, yellow ochre, cadmium orange, cadmium red, permanent rose. This is burnt sienna. Usually I use transparent oxide red. They were just out of it. We couldn't order any. Last time we ordered paint, a lot of times they go in back order on that stuff, so I just ordered some burnt sienna instead. This is viridian, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, and ivory black. The thing to think about with your colors is it's not that big of an issue, okay? As long as you've got, I'm running out of colors all the time, and I don't worry. I don't say, oh, I can't paint now because I don't have blue, I don't have green, I don't have a particular red. As long as you've got some kind of red, some kind of blue, some kind of yellow, you're fine. So this is just a full palette, and a lot of times, depending on what the color harmony is, I might not use that much of a particular color. So in my studio, I just have them all out there. When we go on a trip, I just bring blue, red, yellow, and white. That's it. And you can mix everything very easily, and it's just a lot easier to travel with and carry with. I think a lot of the people who are more plein air painters, they do that more. They tend to get more into using the limited colors because they're so used to not carrying them. Since we do more studio work, it's just more convenient. It's convenient to have the orange and yellow ochre out there. Now, color is such a thing that people worry about. I mean, I'd say more people are in my class to learn color when they take a workshop than they are anything else. And really, it's a much lower down there on the list of things that most people need to work on. Mr. Parks used to say, as long as you get the color temperature right and the value right, the color can be just about anything. And it's very true. Most of the times when you see something going off on your color in your painting, it's not the particular color choice, it's usually the color temperature.
Why did you go so warm on the temperature in the background?
Because I'm going to be putting some blues over that. That's a good question. Another question about color. We're talking about warm and cool temperatures. I'm always thinking in doubles, in twos. Like even in this here, I put a cooler version of the hair color down and now a warmer version of it over the top of it. Almost the same value. Almost every single thing that I paint in a painting, I'm dividing up into like two. And you'll see me on my palette, like in here, I'm mixing them right next to each other. Same thing when I do the background or when I get into the green. I'll mix them right next to each other so that I can match the value, or if I like in this one I want to go slightly darker. Right on my palette is where I'm making that decision of what value that is. And that just gives you more of a vibration of your color in your scene. It's you don't have to, sometimes you do it really extreme. You'll say, okay, I'm doing a purple shawl. And so rather than mix blue and red together and put it down, I'm going to put down the blue and then I'm going to put the red on top of it. Okay? Or if you're doing green, you do it with the yellow and the blue. And so you can let the eye mix it on the canvas. Now you can do it real extreme like that, or you can do it real subtle. You can say, I'm going to have two purples, but one purple that's a little bit of a cooler purple and a little bit of a warmer purple. I put one down, put the other down on top of it or right next to it. Gives just a little bit of a variety and vibration to the color. Now, how much you decide to divide it up just is really up to the particular painting or your mood or what you're going for in that thing. The most important thing, though, when you do that, whether it's bright colors or grays, is to separate it, is to not separate the values, to make sure that the values are exactly the same so that they will visually, still read. And I'm just going to block in some of this, some of the shadows here on the face. You can put your hands down for 2 minutes. I'm going to block your face in here. So much to tell you. Now, since I'm just doing the one demo here, and like I'm telling you, there's so many different ways to start. Probably most of you have seen our website, but we've put several, like 6 or 7 demos on there, paintings in progress that I've shot in the studio, and you'll see ones that are drawn out, that are more complicated and then painted on top of. You'll see ones that are done just one section to the section with no drawing, and you'll see ones in different stages in between, and I kind of try and say on there why I'm doing it this way or that way. And a lot of people, what you'll say, when I was in school, you'd wonder, why would you ever do one rather than the other? What's the disadvantage or the advantage of drawing it out as opposed to doing it straight onto the canvas with no drawing? Pretty much it has to do with brushwork, for me at least. When I draw something out on the canvas, always the struggle then is you've put a lot of effort into drawing that eye or that nose or whatever it is out, and so you're hesitant to just lose the drawing again. So you'd start to paint up to the lines, up to the edges, So if you've drawn the nostril and all this stuff, you're not going to want to put that one simple big stroke over the whole shadow under the nose and then put the dark over it. You're going to take a small brush and you're trying to paint around that dark, then you're going to try and paint that dark inside there, and so you'll have lots and lots and lots of little brush strokes. So, and for me, at least my particular aesthetic, I love seeing, this isn't my invention. I got this from Sargent and from Schmidt and from our teachers, and where you see that large stroke of the eye socket underneath, and then you see the little brush strokes on top of that. Just very simple, but you can still see that large stroke underneath. And like you see the painting of the old lady's face and stuff, that's what gives that more of the, strength, is those large shapes. And so that's why working over drawing can be difficult. Now, when I do work over a drawing, and you'll see that if you see some of those demos, and Sue will laugh at me all the time about that. I will draw something out, and I might spend a long time drawing it out. And then I block it in like this, and I lose all my drawing, except for basically the big placement. You just can't be afraid to do that. You drew it once, you can draw it again, but still you struggle with that. Sometimes you'll still struggle and start finding yourself painting up to lines rather than painting these big 1-2 value shapes to start with. So that's but then when you have a really complicated painting, a real big painting with lots of people in it, or some sort of very difficult pose that the model is not going to be able to hold consistently from time to time. After the first half hour, it's never going to really be the same. It's very important to draw it out so that you have that drawing set and you're not trying to chase it. So that supersedes the difficulties you might have with getting good brushwork later. So here I'm just the two big values, kind of trying to block in these shapes. And this is the fun stage for me, is we just start to play with your brushwork. You can do the big shapes, and I love the paint kind of going into each other and moving. It's the very abstract part of it. This is the part when I'm painting outside, and I have a model, or even when I'm doing landscapes, but especially people, because people will come by and they'll look at what you're painting, and it's funny because the models will be laughing and telling me, it's like everybody's coming by and like, what? It's just this big soupy mess, and everybody just thinks you're nuts. And then after maybe an hour and a half, when it starts to look human, that's when you start to get a crowd of people who are all watching. Nobody wanted to watch that beginning, unless they're an artist. Nobody wanted to watch that beginning stage. They think you're just, crazy. And it's interesting because people don't see a face like that. They're used to seeing everything, and they don't really look at it, to see these shapes. And so, but this is fun because you can see. Now, if I had a drawing down here, I would really be, and that's just, for me particularly, I just love this underlying stuff. And the stuff I put over, the more careful and precise, and I can leave some of this alone, the better. Now, that's the hard part, because that's where the life drawing comes in. Now, when you get this just right, just the way you want it, being able to then put the one stroke down, like the one nostril stroke, like you see Sargent, you see this beautiful underlying stuff, and you see the nostril in just the right place with one stroke, that takes tremendous drawing skills. You have to do life drawing so it's so ingrained that you can place that just right there and not have to then mess it up. So that's why I could never paint this way for a long time in school. I never could, because it was my drawing skills weren't good enough. It'd take me a lot of years of practicing. So, to get to the point where you could draw and paint at the same time. Yeah, it's for me, in my own work, I'm always thinking of two things. Put your hands up for a second again. I want to just block them in there. I'm always thinking of two aspects of painting. The first is the technical aspect of getting things correct and accurate. And the right values, the right shapes, the right drawing. And then the other aspect is making it interesting in and of itself. So, like you can, George Carlson had given a talk at the Autry about drawing in that aspect, but the same applies to painting, where you want the line. You can draw something very accurate and trace it or whatever, but then you also want the line in and of itself, like a Chinese brushstroke, to have beauty and character. So even if you were to just isolate that part of the drawing, the line itself is a work of art. It's the same thing with the painting. If you can just isolate like a certain section of like a Fession or a Sargent, those brushwork and everything, even though you don't know, if you see it in that isolation, you don't know that it's what it is. It looks beautiful. It's a beautiful work of abstract art. Now combining that with it being the right value in the right place and being part of the realistic, nature that you're seeing, that to me is the magic, is combining those two. And so so I'm always trying to think of both of those. I'm trying to think not only to make it look correct, like what I'm seeing, but I'm also trying to think, how can I simplify this? How can I put down a brushstroke that is interesting and simple? I try and make every aspect, every part of the painting, that if you were to block it off, even if it was just a background area, has some interesting brushwork. I mean, you could put this down absolutely perfectly and carefully and just absolutely flat, but then it wouldn't have, much life to it. Now, a lot of that just comes naturally, and everybody will have a different way of doing their brushwork and a different, just type of brush and just the way your muscles kind of move it, and it'll just give it that individual character. Isn't this fun? This is the fun part, because you're not really to worry as much. Okay, now I'm going to start getting some of this green here. Let's put some of that on here. So you can see at this stage, you can really see how you're thinking of it not as a person. Once you start getting a lot of things down, it's hard to remember that the artist is still not thinking about it as the model, as a person at all. You're just thinking about shapes and colors and values, and you're squinting and comparing. Some people were asking me about this during the week. How do you get out of that if you're having a real problem not thinking about what you're painting? And I was saying there's several ways you can give yourself strange angles looking up that will get you out of your normal thing. What Sue does a lot when she's working from photos is she'll turn the photo upside down, and she paints the whole painting upside down. And people are startled by that when they see her working like that in the studio, and they think, wow, that's really a talent. But non-artists will think that. But really, that's the way you should be thinking, even when it's turned straight up and down. You should be thinking about it as completely as just abstract shapes and puzzle pieces, so that when you're working upside down, it's not actually hard. It's not like any harder than working from, as long as you've gotten to the stage where you're actually thinking about just shapes. Now, if you haven't got to that stage yet, then it will be challenging to you. But the nice thing about it is it'll make it easier for you to try and think that way. So you might want to try that if that's a problem. And Mr. Parks, our teacher, a lot of things Dan said were just so much the same, because we had the same instructor, and just his words are always going through my head, and just reminding you, squint and compare. Also about attitude, about he would say that if you frown at your painting, it'll get revenge on you. And that's important, because every painting is so frustrating and hard. You have to keep reminding yourself not to get down on it, not to start hating your painting, and to really try and keep positive even when you're running into troubles. Paintings are always hard, no matter what level you get to. I was telling people yesterday about particular paintings. They're like, well, what particular paintings are difficult? And there's several that you may have seen on our website. The one that I did of a big painting from Peru of 3 women, an old woman, a young girl, and then another girl with her back to us. And I did the old woman, and it went surprisingly easy for me. Usually I have to do things over and over and over, and I just don't get them. And that one actually went really fairly easily. A few things, went awry and I had to scrape them and redo them. But then I got to the young girl, who I thought was going to be the easy one to paint, and I thought the old one was going to be the hard one, and I just could not get it right. And I literally painted it, completely finished the head 7 times and took it off 7 full times before I finally, and I still wasn't super happy with it, and I finally just went on to the rest of the painting, and then at the end I did a little bit more to it and finally got to where I liked it. But man, that was it was so, it's amazing how hard that is. So just to let you know that you're not alone, and to also let you know that if you're hoping that in a couple years it will get easy and your life will be happy, then you're deluded, and you really need to go into tic-tac-toe or something you can master, because you can't master painting. I honestly thought that would happen when I started art school. I honestly thought when I would go up to all the advanced students and look at their work, they're in their 3rd year, I honestly thought, boy, if I can ever get to that point, my life is just, I'm going to be so happy. Everything is going to be great. It's going to be easy. And I had some doubts because of the fact that I would go up to them every day and say, God, that's great. That is so wonderful. And they'd be like, that really means a lot coming to you, Scott, since you say that every day for every single painting, and then they would go into telling me how, they're so frustrated, they want to just give up, and this is horrible, and the colors and I just thought, man, they're either like putting on this act, or they're just nuts, because when I can do that painting, I'm going to be so happy. And it wasn't until you were there for a couple of years and you start to get to their level and you realize, gosh, I'm not happy anymore. People come up to you and start saying that about your paintings, and you start swearing the same way about how horrible, and just so that was kind of an eye-opener. But it is nice to see things get better. At least you can look back at some of your old work and say, well, I'm not where I want to be, but at least I'm not there anymore, How could I have lived with myself? I can't believe I showed those to people. Sue, we were going through old photos. One time, and we came across all these photos of the paintings, and well, they were all life drawings. I wasn't even painting yet. That I had won the scholarship with the Academy each year. And Sue and I were looking at them. We were just laughing. We were like, "Oh my God, can you believe that you won a scholarship for this thing? I mean, can you believe that you wanted to show anybody this? I mean, now you would be so embarrassed, to show somebody that. It's so fun." But I was very proud of those at that time. So that's amazing how things change. And then some paintings you look back and you think, wow, why can't I do that now? Or you're just surprised. It was like, wow, that was a kind of a, diamond in the rough type thing. How come I didn't just keep doing that? It took me another 6 years till I could actually do that consistently. It's funny how that happens. No, just mineral spirits. I'm thinning this down at this stage just to kind of get some simple patterns. I just quickly cover all this white up, and then we'll take a break. So I want you to see it before I start actually painting any details. I usually take a break in between that stage. Now this stage, sometimes I will carry on for quite a while, really getting all the big shapes. It might not look any different, more strokes than this, but I might really just keep working them until I really get an interesting, brushwork, interesting pattern or whatever, really working these edges back into each other. it might look like it was just very quick, and sometimes it is very easy and quick this stage, and you go on very immediately. But most of the time, I kind of will work it and work it back and forth till I really have it to where I like it. And then I'll usually take a break because you are shifting gears when you go from this general sort of large shapes and then into the details. You're completely changing your mindset. You go from kind of, okay, big, large. I know sometimes the way I think about it is how two ways of looking at things, how you have rods and cones in your eyes, and one is to look at the whole thing, it sees the whole, and then other things are to zero in. One, I forget which is which. One is the rods, I think, are the ones that look at the wide, the cones are the ones that zero in. And it's kind of like that. You're kind of, I'm not zeroing, I'm looking in, I'm not letting my eye settle. I'm really trying to balance all of these values, always squinting, always looking at the lightest light and darkest dark. And don't let your eye rest in one thing when you're making these kinds of large value shapes between the shadow and the light. I see this so much when I teach classes, and I see this so much in my early paintings at art school. I look at them, and I would have a setup like this in class, and I would have the lights, I would have the shadow and the light. They ended up becoming the same value in color. Same value. And I know exactly why that is now. It's because I wasn't listening to Mr. Parks. I didn't know I didn't know about squinting and comparing well enough yet. And I was letting my eye look right into the shadow. And then I was making my value decisions on that. And then I was looking right into the light. And that is akin to if you walk into a dark room, say we have a door open here that's a sunlight outside, and we have a piece of paper on the floor in here with the lights like the way they are now. Then we have a piece of paper out in the sunlight. Now if we walk outside and look at that for a minute or so, that white paper will look white. We come in here, we look at the white paper, our eye opens up, sees more light, it'll look white to us. Just like is happening here. Your eye, if you could have a camera on your eye, you would literally see it when you stare into the shadow. You'd see it actually open up, and you'd see it close down when you stare for a few seconds into the light. It's changing the way it sees it. So, like the paper, if you stood in the threshold in the doorway, and you look quickly back and forth between outside, inside, then your eye wouldn't have time to adjust, and you would see how relative to each other, this paper is actually dark, that one's actually light. It's the same thing with these things. That's why Mr. Parks would just say, keep your eye moving around. Don't let it settle when you're thinking about your values. Move it back and forth between light and dark and compare things. That's what I'm doing here, moving all around, back and forth. And it doesn't have time then to open up or close down, and so I'm seeing the true relationships between them, okay? Then once you get your values and things, once you've made that decision, then you can stare into it and look at the shape, look at the color, look at the edges, but you just have to ignore your eye opening up, and you can't let yourself make that value decision on that. Now somebody asked also about, as I'm blocking in here, why I went so green in the hair, okay? Now that's just like what I was talking to you about. You always have to be thinking about the final painting, okay? Don't try and finish your painting with every single stroke. You're thinking about the whole process of it, okay? So I'm thinking, this is a very warm light, it has a very warm effect, but that warm is, if you put all that warm down, it will be very hard to get cool over it. Sometimes like when you have flesh tones and stuff, if you go so warm, you put all the pinks down, trying to get that little bit of blue or influence or the greenish or the ochreish influence is hard because you have to use such a thin brush. So what I'll often do is I'll almost go the opposite. I'll put the cools down. Sometimes I'll go real blue and green in the face. I'll put all these purples and blues, and then I'll put the flesh tone over that, so that just shows through a little bit. Now landscape painters do the same thing a lot of times when they do go ahead and put your hands up. I'm going to block them in. When they do like grass or things that are so powerful of a color that they'll kind of overtake things. So if you paint all this green grass, getting those little bits of warmth that are showing through, like say from the dirt and ground, putting little spots of brush like that. So oftentimes you'll see them put a wash of of like orange, and then they'll pull the green over that, and then that'll just show through a little bit. That's the same thing that I'm doing here. So was a really good question. I wanted to answer it for everybody rather than just the break. So always be thinking those two things, because there's so many colors up there, and there's going to be a warm and a cool variety of these colors. Now you have to be very careful when you when you're kind of thinking about that in the beginning stages, okay? You have to really decide. You want to go with the warm and the cool, and you want to think about what the light is, okay? The rule is, we have a warm light, you have a cool shadow, all right? When you have a cool light, you have a warm shadow. It's always the opposite, okay? So if we're working with north light, it will be cooler lights, warmer shadows. If we're working with spotlight, warmer light, cooler shadows. But when I was in school, my problem when I first started doing that, painting under those lights and stuff, is I would just look at just the face, and so I was thinking, I was making everything pure orange and pure blue in the shadows, okay? And Mr. Parks was saying you have to keep in mind the local color of the object too. You have to, and sometimes what happens is it's just like values. If you stare right at just the face and you're only seeing these colors, you start to see more and more blue and more red, because it's all you're seeing, just like we're talking about with values. If you look right into the shadows. And so he would say that you got to move your eye around. Maybe if you think this is really blue, okay, a blue-purple, move your eye down and look to something that's really blue in the picture. Same thing with a landscape. A lot of times you'll be painting the shadows of the trees, and you'll start painting them so blue. But then if you actually look and compare them to the sky or to water or something, you'll realize, wow, they're not really as blue as the sky, but I've used my purest blue in those shadows. So you have to keep your eyes moving around. And so basically you just want to keep in mind your local color of the object as well as the color of the light. So if you're doing a pumpkin under a warm spotlight, yes, it will be cooler in the shadow, but it will be a cooler orange, and then there will be warmer orange in the light. They're both going to really technically be orange. So in color wheel, they'll both be warm. So don't let that confuse you. It's cooler relative to the other color. So an apple, a cooler red, a warmer red. Okay, it doesn't mean you go totally blue. Now if it's a white object, it has no local color. That's where you'll really see a real blue, real warm. And even then you'll be getting bounce lights and stuff, so it usually won't be pure blue. Does that make sense to everybody? Let me know if I need to go into that more, okay? Because that was a very big, confusing revelation to me. First I learned about the temperature of the light, and I was trying to think scientifically. So I'd make all my shadows blue, and all my lights red, and it took me a while to really start to get a handle on the local color and the relativity idea of that. So yeah, I'm still at this blocking stage, so I'm just really still, and you can do it with a palette knife, you can do it with a brush, you can block in these things. That doesn't matter. The important thing is these values, colors, and I'm also really, when I'm at this stage, I'm consciously trying to not just paint within total lines. For me, I really like the quality of edges that I can work paint into paint. So if I'm doing like the hair or whatever, you see I went farther over than the face, and I'd pull the hair back in. I'm going to just do the same thing with the background. I'll pull some of the hair a little farther over. And it's not just because I have trouble with drawing. It's because I'm thinking, pull that a little farther so that I have some paint to work into when I get to that, okay?
Scott, you paint so thick, do you ever get to the point where you just put so much on you can't manipulate it anymore?
Well, sometimes it's too thick in an area you don't want to be, and so you'll scrape it down. But no, you could really always paint, thick on top of thick, but it really just has to do with how thick you paint. Just has to do with what you're going for in that painting, what you're painting. So like if you look at the two larger paintings that I brought, one was painted very thin for most all of the painting, and one was painted very thick. They're just different subjects. The dancers was dark. It was a darker painting. Go ahead and put your hands down if you can. Take a break. Start blocking this in. It was a darker painting, And it was very subtle. They were young girls with smoother skins. I wanted soft edges, and I didn't want all that glare in the dark, so I painted it very thin and washy. Now, the old lady's face was more in the lights, and just the thick paint helped express the texture of wrinkles. So I didn't have to actually paint wrinkles in. The way I used the paint was giving you that sense, okay, of that. So it's geared towards what I'm painting. You know, what is it better express? So that's really the way you decide that. Does that make sense?
Could I ask you to repeat something?
Yes, go ahead.
When you just said about that it wasn't that your drawing skills were bad, you were painting over the edge so you had something to paint into?
Right.
Would you?
Like here, you see how I went farther out than her arm? I don't really think her arm is that wide, okay? But I'm purposely going a little wider so that now when I get to actually refining this, I can paint back with this dark here underneath. I can carve that back out. I'll have some paint to work my brush into and get an interesting fusing kind of edge. Now if I drew this out and painted right up to the line, that's how you get hard edges through your whole painting. Okay, you're painting right up to the line, right to the line. Everything becomes hard, okay? So same thing with this. See, I'm going to do both. I'm going to pull the hair over the background, into the background a little bit, and then I'll be pulling the background into the hair back and forth. The same thing when you get to like hairlines here. This is very soft, so you're going to be wanting to move the paint both ways, okay? And you also want to be, you really want to be conscious, like, you know, I'm getting to the stage where I'm just going to start to refine some of these large shapes, and then I'm going to start zeroing in and painting more finished things. You have to be conscious of what you're going for. Now, when you're doing a figure, you see some of the small figure ones I do, or something like this where the head is just this size. This is more about the drama, the light, the whole painting, okay? I'm not trying to paint a full finished portrait. So you're going to keep this a lot simpler. Same thing with a figure painting, okay? It's more about the whole pose of the figure. You don't want to get it as detailed or as finished as you would if I was just painting this, it would be a whole different thing. So I'm really trying to keep that in mind. These are just things that I'm actually thinking to myself. As I start going here, I was just thinking, so I'm just trying to say them out loud so that you can kind of think of what my thought process is when I'm painting. Why am I making that decision, putting that brush stroke? And I'm just squinting down and trying to get some of these brush strokes. I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got that nice color there. That is, I think, just right. But where else can I use that so that it has a unity? Use as few of these as you have to. Some of it in here. Again, going over that edge. Kind of just a train of consciousness here. What I'm thinking about here. That's too dark. Too light, that spot right there. So I'm going to go with this here. Just keep reminding yourself, take your time. If you don't have it correct, keep changing it. Never leave anything on your canvas that you knowingly is incorrect. Now, you're going to have things that are going to go wrong. You have to change them. There'll be a problem. But if you know something's wrong, don't say, well, gosh, I just really have a hard time with mouth, so I'm going to go on to, I'll come to that later. It doesn't work that way, because if you have a wrong value, or if you have a wrong drawing, if I get this nose too long, and I say, well, I'm just going to paint this and get that later, when I move that nose up, everything else is going to have to come up. So it's the same with values and edges. They'll throw you off visually. One of those articles, I had done an article for one of those magazines where we took the same exact color. Kevin has this in his book too, which is a great example. You see the same color surrounded by different colors. And even though it's the same color, and if you isolate it, you see. Your mind, it looks different. So it's the same thing with this. If you get something really wrong, drastically wrong, it's going to literally make other things look different, and so can't let that happen. Can't let that stay there. So now I'm going to start going from real big, and I'm going to start refining my center of interest, which is the face. I'm going to really shift gears, and I'm going to just start zeroing in here. So from really large shapes Now I'm going to start going on to the medium-sized shapes and really start refining this eye socket, the dark under the nose here, and really start getting those shapes right. After that, I will shift and go into the really small details. And nothing will ever really start to look like anything until the very end. So you can't let yourself think, God, I'm worried everybody's looking around here, they're not going to think that I can draw a portrait, so I've got to make it look like, in the first half hour, I've got to make it look like the model. You have to, the only way to, so many times people ask, how do you get a likeness? I mean, that's just so common, and the truth is you just do not think about it as a likeness. You do not think about trying to paint a likeness. You have to just think about one after another, every shape. If you can just get each one accurate and correct and analyze it and make sure that you check it, squint and compare it against your darkest dark and lightest light, then you just have to trust at the end that it will start to look like the model, and it will. So just kind of getting this whole socket and these edges here a little bit. We're going to go down to smaller. Oh, I haven't looked at it in the screen yet. Now, if it looks better on the screen, just don't show people the painting. Just give them a video of your paintings. That's when you should become like a TV demonstration artist, Just never let anybody see the original. See how I've gone from the bigger brushes now down to a little more medium-sized brush for these areas. Then I'll go down to the really small ones. Now, for me, even though you might see like a painting of the old lady and think, your eye is drawn to those big brush strokes. So you think, a lot of people think, well, that's what I'm spending most of the painting doing. But really, that's only maybe the first tenth of the painting, Because those things, you can see how quickly those block in. Now, the rest of the painting, I'm using really tiny little dinky brushes, okay? And people think, God, I just don't, whenever I do workshops or people come to my studio and they see me working on a bigger painting, they think, well, we just didn't realize you used all these tiny little brushes. I mean, and it's because I use those tiny brushes after I do the block-in that you can still see those big brush strokes, okay? That's the whole point of then just slightly trying, like these Langnickels, some of them you can just slightly like soften an edge and not lose the big brush stroke. You don't realize that you've used a small brush to slightly change it, I see a lot of people go too far with their block-ins to where they do a great job getting these big shapes like this, and then they get to the point where they should be switching to the smaller brushes, but they don't, and they keep working with the big brush, and they just ruin all that beautiful. You see how beautiful some of these strokes are? The trick will be to just do as few things as possible then to really make it real. But if you just keep working them and working them to death, they'll just kind of fall into mush, into a gray mush eventually. Okay, so squint down here, and now I'm going to hold my brush straight up and down and just drop a plumb line from where I kind of have this eye socket to where this shadow on the nose starts, where the side of the nose is. It's right there. So right there, and I go straight down, and I see how I make this so carefully, because now that I've got these brush strokes here, these beautiful patterns here, okay, I want it, now if I'm not as good as I want to be, so I'm not like Sargent where he will get these right and leave them, so hopefully I can leave that alone, and I'll just get the highlight and do a little bit here, a little under the nose, and you'll still be able to see some of these large patterns, okay? That's the real trick. And now you see I go from frantic painter all over the place to extremely slow, extremely methodical, really studying, thinking, almost practicing in my mind the brush stroke before I put it down, okay? So that I can put it down once and leave it. I'll have to adjust edges and stuff, but hopefully some of that other stuff will still show through. Now, like Sargent, he's really him and Carlos Duran and Franz Hals. Those are the people who really, invented this way of working, doing the big shapes, drawing as you paint, seeing the big shapes underneath. Now, like for him, you see his paintings and you think, wow, that looks so simple. But if you read about how he worked, he might do that nose over a dozen times before he got it right. And now he wouldn't just, if he put the nostril in there and it was wrong, he wouldn't then try and fix it. He would just then scrape it and do the big shape again and then do it again. If that didn't come out right, scrape it. You have to always go back to that big shape because he was so wanted those brush strokes to really be so, interesting and nice. So that happens to me a lot of times when if I get something really starting to go awry and I'm not getting it right, I have to just stop then and reestablish the large shape and then do that detail again because I want it to be a nice clean shape and pattern. Okay? And obviously, this is what I want you to learn from these demos. Now, obviously, painting in the studio, I might do this over and over, and I don't want you to get the impression that every painting I dash off in 3 hours, and talk the whole time. And in my studio, it was very distracting to me to talk. I wouldn't want to talk at all. It's very concentrating. I want you to learn these things. I want you to know what I'm thinking about while I'm doing this. That's the whole purpose of the demo. So don't think that you need to do it as quick as this, okay? Just do it as slow as you need to. I think I need to raise that up. So I'm going to go back. It's a good, perfect lesson, because I hate that about demos, that people, sometimes I see them then try and paint, and they're trying to paint as fast as I did during a demo. Now, we just have a certain amount of time, so that's just what you have to do. But in the studio, that's what I would be doing. Reestablish that again. Nice, simple shape. I want to raise it up a little bit where I was putting that nostril. So we'll go back up here. That's probably the best lesson I could teach you. Even though I can't really, in a demo, show you how many times I might do something and do it over and over until it's correct. But that's what you should think about. And see how nice, for me, just having all that paint in there, see how I don't even have to mix up a lighter value, just kind of work it into this, and it kind of lightens, using the paint that's already underneath there. So nice to be able to do that. Now, some people like to just do this shape and then finish the eyes and go and do the next big shape, and that's fine too. The balance is, I'll go back and forth. Now, this is such a small area that I'm going to kind of block in all these medium shapes before I then go back in and start doing the small shapes, the real small shapes, just to make sure I get all these relationships correct. And just don't worry about it looking, like anything. Just keep thinking, is this shape, is that shape like that shape? And just trust that eventually, get all of them right, it'll start to look like something. Get a little bit more of that half tone on the cheek. That's kind of a pretty large shape there. recently went and visited a friend in Idaho who's a sculptor, George Carlson, and we did some sculptures there and drawings, and it was amazing to me how similar the sculpture was to the way I think about painting. Big shapes, middle shapes, small shapes, all that, and it was very, very interesting. It was just so much the same sort of a way of thinking. Okay, greener here. But yeah, feel free to ask questions. Don't think there's any dumb questions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good question. Mainly what I do on big paintings that will take several days or even weeks is I really divide those up into sections. Like this might be the largest section I would work on at a time. So then maybe this would be the face. So real large paintings, oftentimes those are complicated enough that I sketch them out in charcoal. I'll block everything in, measure everything out so that I get everything placed correctly. And then I just will zero in and I will just work on just the face and finish that. And then I will work on the next thing, and I'm just really finishing it as I go. So I'm taking a chunk, I'm doing just what I'm doing here. Large shapes, middle, small, but just in this area, in this section. Because if I do this, the large sections for the whole painting, that might take me a couple days, and then everything will be dried, and I'm just fighting that. Now, there's ways around that. It just depends on what your technique is. I saw that video with Scott Christensen, and he blocks in all the large shapes and then lets it dry and then puts some sort of a medium thing over it to give it like a fluidity, and then he paints the next stage. So, but for me, I really like painting the wet into wet for the whole time if I can. It's just if I get to the point where I get something and I see, and that always happens. There's something that I'll see that I need to work more on, then I will. Then I'll go and work on it while it's dry. If it's a really big change, if it's a really big area, like I really need to move something or repaint a whole nose, usually it's just little edges or adding a little bit of notes of color. But if it's something big, then I will just remix those colors and reapply them to that nose over the top of that. If it's really thick and it's going to bother me, I'll scrape it down so that it's flat, and I'll just repaint just that little area so I have wet paint, and then I'll paint into that. So that's how I handle that. Yeah, good question.
What if you have a painting that has dried and you want to rework it?
Same thing. I'll just paint over it, and reapply the paint to that whole area, get it wet, and then do it. If it's really major, then I just don't like to then try and totally redo it. I'll just turn it over. I'll scrape it down. I'll turn it over and I'll just repaint the whole painting. And I've done that several times. There's a painting on there you might have seen that's of Sue, of my wife. It's a profile. She has like a white shirt on and has a dark background. There's actually two paintings on that canvas. If you x-ray it, you'll see the same painting upside down on that canvas, because I painted the whole thing, completely finished it once, and didn't like it, and so it was dry and everything, so I scraped it all down so that it didn't have all these ridges of paint, and I turned it over, and I painted it all again. And the second time it went so easily. It was amazing. But the first time, it was so much of a struggle. The first time, and it was interesting because I'm always questioning myself when I'm starting a painting. Should I draw it out or should I not draw it out? Because I know it's going to be harder for the brushwork if I draw it out. And I know that it'll be easier with the brushwork if I don't, but I might have more difficulty, placing things, and sometimes that gives me problems. So the first time I did it, I drew it out in charcoal first, and I painted it, and it came out all accurate and everything. It's just the brushwork, everything, I just didn't like it. So then the second time I did it, I didn't draw it out. I just started at one area and painted it, and then moved on, and it went so much easier. But it's hard sometimes to know. Sometimes I try them that way, and it's just too complicated for my brain to handle, and I end up doing it a second time and I draw it out the second time, and then I might get it to work. So, it's just kind of like a toss up. Some paintings are real obvious that you have to draw out or not draw out because they're so complicated or they're so simple. But
When you have to redo a painting, why don't you just get a new canvas, like break it down, sand it, and do all that?
well, it only takes me a minute to scrape it down. I mean, I have to restretch a whole canvas and everything. That'll take me much more time, and then I'm not wasting the canvas. I've already got the size all set. That's why, really, because I've got it there. It's all set. It's the right size I wanted, and so I'll just do it then. Yeah. Usually it hasn't dried. That was an extreme one because I was so in the middle of whether I liked it or not, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to redo it or not. For a long time I thought maybe this is good enough, and so I kept debating and thinking and trying this, trying that, and finally I just got to the point of where, no, it's not going to work, and I took it off. But most of the time, the painting, there might be spots on it that have dried, but by the time I realize I've got to redo it, it's, I can wash most of it off, and there's only a little bit, little bits on there that are dry. So that was extreme. Usually I know, before it's been several days. Usually by the next day I'll know, and I'll wash it all off and I'll start again. Now this is kind of fun I just keep squinting down. I really want to tie some of these shadows together. Don't want to get too noodly in the shadow with the details. I really want that to hold together, just to be simple, and I want all my stuff eventually it will be more in the light. You always want to, when you're doing something, you want to kind of try and think, where do I want all my emphasis to be more? Is it more about the light? Is it more about the shadow? And if it's more about the light, then you simplify, use less values, tie it together more your shadows. If it's more about the shadow, you want all the information in there, then you're going to simplify this and put a little less, value changes and work in that. You always want to make a decision, so whether it's a portrait or a mountain or whatever it is, especially something like this where I can almost do either, where it's almost half and half. I say, well, do I want the emphasis to be in the light? Do I want people to look in the light? Do I want to put more brushwork, color, detail in the light or in the shadow? Don't let them get both the same to where you get as much detail and changes in the shadow and in the light. Either or. Now, most of the time you'll have something that is kind of obvious. You'll either have, so much, it'll be a backlit one, and so that rim light will just be so simplified, and all the information will be in the shadow. Or it'll be the other way. The shadows will be just really small, and like the one that Dan has of his paintings there, that was the one all the way in the left of the profile. You see the shadow underneath the nose is just, he didn't even put the nostril in. Simplified. All the color and brushwork went in the light. Always kind of try and make that decision. Okay. And don't rush yourself on getting these big patterns right. Okay, it won't look right for quite a long time, but you just keep working them, keep squinting until you get them to just be just what you see up there. Now you have a great expression, so you're just holding a nice expression, so that's no problem. A lot of times in the studio, just a tip is, when a model's sitting for a long time, your face will just kind of settle, and you'll kind of almost look mad. So I often, when I paint the mouth in this area, I will actually kind of talk to the model, get them talking, and so I can just kind of see what's happening, and use that, and you can keep it from getting kind of angry looking. Because I see a lot of paintings that way, and that's just what people don't realize, that's the way you look, because it's so unnatural for you to be sitting still like this and staring forward, and your face settles. Normally, you're always having some sort of reaction to something that you're looking at, looking around, talking to somebody. It's just very odd to have that happen. So. Oh yeah, definitely the light. Yeah, that's why I'm really scrubbing these shadows together. There'll be little bits in there, be little bits of the eye, but yeah, it's definitely going to be in the light that my emphasis is on this one. Yeah, and I decided that before I put my first brush stroke down. Those things are so quick too. Some of those decisions, when you're looking at it, they become almost unconscious. Where you first sit down and start to analyze things. You're thinking, oh, my lightest light, darkest dark, edges, what's full value. It happens so fast because it's become so just a part of you to analyze those things. But in the beginning, you have to really almost make a checklist if you need to. Really make a checklist. And I used to write down on my easels. I still write notes and stuff of things I'm working on to remind me to think about. I'll write on my canvas. You might see this in I don't remember if those particular ones, but I do it often. So some of the demos on the website might have that where I've actually written. You'll see written in there in charcoal, lost edges, squint and compare, color harmony, or whatever. It's what I'm concentrating on trying to work on and trying to improve at that time. So I'll actually write them on the canvas when I start to remind me, keep reminding myself, or I'll write them on my palette or on here. I'll post a note here. And if you want to make yourself a checklist before you start a painting, like a pilot, what's my lightest light, darkest dark? Is it about the light or the shadow? What's my light and dark pattern? What's my center of interest? Those will really help you. You have to answer them before you start. So many times when I haven't really clearly thought those out, and I'm kind of starting painting out and doing things, and I realize, this would really be better this way. It's just about impossible to switch gears and change it there. You have to just wipe it down. And this happened to me so many times at the palette chisel where I would work the first half hour and then realize, boy, I really didn't have any sort of clear vision of what I wanted to go for in the painting. And after that first half hour, I have to wipe it down. I just wipe it all down and start fresh. And I'm so happy to wipe it down because now I have something clear in my head that I'm kind of going for. And I know what I have to do then. Before I was just kind of, drifting, not really on track. A lot of people asked about taking pictures on trips, and I thought I should maybe repeat it so everybody heard this. Taking photos on trips. Lots of questions about: do you hire the model? Do you have release forms? Do you pay people? How do you do it? Especially places like Tibet and stuff where you're not even speaking the language. We don't do release forms in those countries. People just wouldn't understand them. I only really started doing it once I did some did the art book and stuff, and publishers told me I had to have those. So we do that with models that we hire in our studio. We'll just have them sign it and keep it on file, just so that we've got it. If we ever want to use that painting for a book, or like Richard Schmid, Sue's a portrait he had done of Sue a long time ago. He's having in a new book he's doing, so he'd sent her a release form, and they all need to have those now. People in other countries like that, it's just not going to happen. So some people will say you shouldn't do a painting without it, but it's just not possible. And I want to paint the herders of Tibet, and I know that's not going to be. They can't even write. How am I? That's just so. I just, you're probably taking a risk, but that's just the way it is. And I care more about my paintings than I do about worrying about getting sued. And so that's the way it is. And if you're out on the street and stuff, it's it's just not going to happen. So it's a balance you have to make for yourself. All kinds of artists, do that. If you need a simple release form, we put the one that we use on our frequently asked questions page, so you can copy and paste it, print it out, just put your own name in there.
What's your average model fee at the studio?
We pay usually anywhere from $15 to $20. I think the art leagues by us pay like $8, so it's models are usually very happy with that. But things are just very cheap in North Carolina. So, but we figure that's what we pay in Chicago anyways. We should just, it just seemed fair. And then we'll pay a little extra for them to drive, depending on how far they're driving to our studio. Now, as far as how to take pictures in some of these places, it's just use common sense. We don't take pictures of people who don't want their picture taken. Now, lots of times if I'm using my long lens, people don't even know that I'm taking their picture. So if you just find yourself a quiet spot to sit for a few hours, you can have your long lens. You can be taking really interesting pictures, and people don't know. If everybody says, "Don't take my picture," I just don't. And like I was telling him, like when we went to the this big herder area where there was like 5 miles of just tents and yak herders, and it was just they move across this plain. When we first got there, nobody wanted their picture taken. So I said, "Oh, okay, I'll put my camera away." But if you just take time to spend time with people, I did a sketch of one of the people and gave it to him. Everybody was watching. Sue brings a big, huge bag of pencils and colored pencils and paper, and she gives it to the kids, and then they draw with it and stuff. You take the time to make a relationship. By the time we left, every single person there was happy to have us take their photograph. They all wanted to, and they even were extremely excited to see their picture on the screen. And they were getting out their good clothes to pose for us. And then if there's particular people you want to hire them. Say, great, it's worth it for us, so we'll pay them. We'll say it will be a half hour. We don't do it in the touristy areas because that's a different sort of thing. If you pay them, you take one picture, then they're going to be like, more money. It's not really, so we really just don't do it in those sorts of areas. But it's all, it makes me cringe so much when I see tourists that are stalking people, walking right up to them with just a small lens, not even using a long lens, right up to them, and they're like, waiting, and the people are like, no, and they're taking their picture, and it's not right. We have so many photographs that I could never even paint anyways. That I took 20,000 photographs in Tibet. There's no reason to force you, even if it would be a good painting, there's no reason. Yeah, it's digital. I could never do that before. And we just burned CDs on them with a portable CD burner, and so it was like 36 CDs. Yeah, it's not really as hard as you think, because really, like a lot of times, like if somebody is like a horse riding or something, I just press it down and shoot in 3 frames per second. It's almost like doing a movie, and so you have a whole bunch. You're really only going to do one painting, but you might have a couple hundred photos of it, and you're just later picking out just the right moment. You have like 600 shots on one card, so, you just put the card in. It's a portable CD burner the size of like a music CD player, and then you just burn it, and then you can erase the card and use it again. So digital is what makes that possible. When we went to China and stuff, we'd have to kind of try and limit ourselves to 2 or 3 rolls a day, because in 30 days, it's like 90 rolls. It's a lot to carry. And so now you can shoot that much in one day. Mainly my technique is to look really at the light, at the model, at what's happening. Now this is getting a warmer yellow color harmony because we have a warm yellow light on it, okay? Now, if you have trouble, and I do exercises with this too, some artists achieve a color harmony. You can force yourself to have a color harmony by choosing certain colors, all right? The principle, basically, is even if you're using your full palette, you have to understand. So if I have a yellow light, only things that are yellow, or it's kind of orangey, so maybe an orange, yellow, orange, only things that are that could be pure yellow, because other things are getting, so if you have something that's blue, say, it's getting yellow light on it, it has to have a little bit of yellow in it. If you have something that's red, it has to have a little yellow in it. It has to be a little orange or red. So in most paintings, most of the time, there of course are exceptions to all these sorts of rules, but most of the time, you're not going to have more than 1 or 2 at the most pure primaries. Now sometimes you can have 2 because of the fact that it's warm light, cool shadow. So if you have something, say, that's white or something, you could have maybe a pure blue in the shadow, because, but even then, usually not. So usually it's just going to be 1 that's going to be pure. Now, even if you look like, if you look at that painting in the museum that was of the kids playing in the water, now that blue looked very vivid, but if you really look at it, or if you held up a color card up to that, you would notice that that blue had a lot of red in it and yellow. There was really no spots of pure blue because of that light that was hitting it, so it had that color harmony. Same thing in the painting I have of the old lady. There's a very vibrant blue stroke in the back, but it's got warmth in it. It's not a pure blue. If I had put the pure blue, it would be like a bad note, in music. It would just look wrong. You wouldn't know why. So you can force yourself to have a harmony by choosing, you can use 3 primaries and just make one of them pure and the other one's gray. So like Zorn, a lot of artists, they use a palette that forces that. Like Anders Zorn used black, cadmium red. They were called different colors then. Cadmium red, which is the pure one. Black is basically a grayed blue, and then yellow ochre. And most of his paintings were done with just those 3 colors. And I've done paintings with those 3 colors too. So you have a grayed yellow, a grayed blue, and a pure red. Now you could do other paintings where you have your pure yellow and a grayed version of the red and blue. So say you'd use burnt sienna instead of red. Other paintings you could use the pure blue. Now of course you have to kind of keep in mind, now if you're doing a painting with a really warm red light, maybe that would be a good time to use the pure red. Now if you're going to do something that's really blue, a blue light, then maybe that would be the time. So that'll force you to have only one of the 3 primaries pure, and you'll automatically get a color harmony. You only use those colors on your palette. Only those 3. I have lots of paintings on my website that are just black, yellow ochre, cadmium red. You won't know it. You probably won't notice it when you see the painting unless it points it out to you. I'd point out to people the Sargent paintings. Lots of times he would use just burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. That was it, and white. I've done some paintings too. There's one of a girl that I did recently that's sewing, from Peru, and there's smoke in the background. That's just ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and white. Okay, so if you go to there, you'll see that painting. A lot of the Sargent paintings are only those 2 colors, so it doesn't even have a pure one. The burnt sienna can kind of be both yellow and red because when you add a lot of white to it, it looks very yellowish. You can get a green mixing it with the ultramarine blue, and so you can try those combinations, and I do them just also for practice and to experiment, and it's nice to get yourself out of kind of color mixture ruts. You can get so used to mixing certain colors all the time that you just are always just doing that. You think, oh, green grass or whatever, you mix that. So if you use black instead of blue, now you'll have to mix that with yellow, and you just use some different mixtures that you wouldn't have used otherwise.
When you said about one way to get color harmony is if the light was like a warm yellow light, then it would be in the blues or the greens that were
Right.
light. But how would that affect the shadow to get color harmony in the shadow? I could see
Well, you
where
see,
it's
your shadow is usually not going to have pure colors in it because it's in the shadow. Really, your purest colors are going to be what are going to actually having light on them, and they're lit. Things in the shadow naturally are going to be a little more grayed anyways. That's why usually it's only one. It's possible to have 2 if you have, like I said, if you're out in the sun and the beach and you have somebody wearing white, you can get some pure blues in the shadow, and you have pure reds. So you might have 2, the yellow and the blue. But that's really rare. Usually you're having the shadows are grayed down anyway, so usually it's only going to be that color in the light, and that's going to suffuse whatever that light color. It's going to suffuse everything. So so there are exceptions, but or could be an exception. Say you're doing a night street scene, and you actually have light sources. You have street lights. You could have a red, yellow, and blue street lights that are pure colors, but they're going to be little notes, and your eye will understand them because they'll realize those are light sources. But even though people don't know that rule, non-artists don't know that rule, when they see a painting that violates that rule, their eye knows there's something wrong, okay? Unless it's like that, like they know it's a light source, and because they're used to seeing nature, and they might not be able to tell you why, but they'll be able to say, well, this painting looks more real, more natural. And so that's a very important thing. It was a revelation to me when I started learning that, and my colors improved a lot by graying down certain things, just like that big painting I was telling you about in there. I would have done it previously. I would have just made that blue in the background pure blue, and now I've learned, that you gotta keep reminding yourself, you gotta keep looking for. Sometimes it's hard because when you're out there, and that's the only blue. It looks so pure blue because you don't have anything to compare it to. You forget. It's like if it's a beach scene and you have a red, yellow, blue, and blue beach towels. That's the only blue, so you want to make it pure blue. But you have to remember, it's all getting sunlight. And if you do it and you make it a little bit yellow, that's why that painting with those kids in there looked so wonderful, because he just had that color harmony, it just looks so real, you know. So I hope I'm getting that clear. It's a very tricky thing. A lot of people have trouble. I had trouble understanding that in the beginning.
Scott, is this the smallest brush you're going to use now?
Yeah, I don't really, that's pretty small. And I'm just trying to, at this point, I'm talking a lot, obviously, you know, but I'm still trying to think simple. Demos are always a curious thing because I want to do both. I want to have you understand what these things are thinking, because that's what painting is more about. It's not so much about having a steady hand or any of that. It's about these mental decisions, like we're talking about the color harmony, talking about the values. You have to understand more. It's more about what you're analyzing and figuring out about it than about purely practice. That's why you can't, that's why, all these things that we know, that's why it takes so long for art to advance. Now you see somebody and you think, well, these things took years and years and years for people to figure out things about color harmony, perspective, about, squinting, preparing for values, and once they were learned, then they passed them on and people had it. But you just don't come by that knowledge just by painting every day. You have to learn them. We've learned them from our teachers and from all these artists that went before. That's why Mr. Parsi, he would be quoting, I can't remember who he was quoting now, but he would say, yeah, anybody who says they're self-taught had an idiot for an instructor. And really, nobody's self-taught. There's people who haven't gone to school and have self-taught themselves by reading a book, by looking at other people's paintings, by learning these principles by reading them, or by studying paintings. But believe me, anybody who is isolated and was never allowed to see any paintings, even if they paint all the time, they would never be able to do that because those lessons took so many thousands of years to slowly accumulate and learn. And you sometimes you don't even realize how unconscious, when you start to see paintings as a kid, how you start to learn those lessons from the paintings that have gone before. Okay? And you just have to, acknowledge that debt that you have to all the painters that went before, and it's great, because and then hopefully if you can add a very little bit. Most of that stuff is just technical. Now the stuff that you add is going to be just because you're going to see things totally different. You're going to want to paint things different. You're going to want to paint different subjects or the way you paint it. It's just going to be your own. Now here I'm putting in a little bit of the notes of some of the warms on top of some of these slightly cooler, and then I'll get a few touches of cooler in the shadow. Now both of them are going to be flesh tones in the light and shadow, but there will be, relative to each other, they will be different. Now the face is the center of interest, so I'm really putting my most work, I'm trying to keep it very simple, but it needs to be real correct. And then this other stuff is going to be much looser and very simple. I don't want to get super detailed in that. Now this is what painting from life teaches you a great deal. This is why we do so much of it in our studio, even though, for me, my favorite paintings that I do, that I will want to say, this is what I do and this is my best work, will always be things from photos, almost always things from photos, because, like that old lady, like the things I'm doing from Tibet, those subject matters are impossible for me to paint from life. Now, if I was a landscape painter or a still life painter, that was my passion, I wouldn't have to worry about that because I could paint them from life, and it's easier to paint from life than from photos. Believe it or not, once you get better, in the beginning it's the opposite, but when you get to the point that I'm at, it's a lot easier to paint from life because you have everything right there. You don't have to try and guess at what things are. But for me those subjects are my favorite. But I paint from life so that I know how to paint from photos, so that you see how we have a limited amount of time, so I'm forced to say more with less, to say, well, what's really important? Okay, I don't have time to get into all those things, so I'm just going to paint this and this, and as you do it more and more, you learn how to simplify and how to say exactly what you want with just those few brush strokes. And then when you get to working from your photo, hopefully then you can paint that same way. You've learned, it's like poetry, you've learned to, do it with fewer words. That's the real key. That's the real key for life, painting from life. That and just being able to see things the way they really are. See what the real color harmonies, the real colors are. And the thing is a lot of times, you think, oh, God, if only I had 3 hours or whatever, or if I had another 3 hours. A lot of times these studies, even though I saw most of these studies to, even when they go into galleries, mostly artists buy them because they can appreciate more of the painting from life, the more nice brushwork and everything. Sometimes those are really a lot better, than if you had spent several days on it. I blow them up, yeah. It depends on how big of the painting I'm doing, but generally I'll blow them up to like 16 by 20. And a lot of paintings, even something of like the old woman, I'm actually usually working from several photos. Not so much that it's maybe a different pose or whatever, but maybe a hand from one, or even just I've got the light right on this one, or just what I want it, but then this one maybe is turned a little bit, but that's more of the expression I want in the eyes or whatever. And so I'll usually put several of them all around my canvas, here and there and there, and then and then I have ones with many figures in them, of course. I've got maybe 8 pictures, and that way I can just be looking at them all at the same time. I can just be taking this one or that one, and so I'll blow them up real large. I just print them out on my printer, and I'll just print them out like our printer goes up to 13 by 19 inch, but usually I just print them out like 11 by 17 or 8 by 10, and I just tile it so that I just tape them together, have a big image like that.
Is there a book that you would recommend about color harmony?
I think Kevin's book is very good, goes over color harmony very well.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you seen that one yet, or?
Yes, I have.
I mean, everybody just
I know which one you're
everybody explains them. Richard goes over the basics of that too. Richard Schmid's book. I'm trying to think what. Edgar Payne's book is very good. He has some about color harmony. I'm trying to think where's the best books that I've seen in color.
Scott, I was noticing on your website that some of your earlier paintings had much more intense color. Is that just a development thing, or your colors more subtle at times?
It's just really just my personal way I want to paint now, more of my aesthetic. Sometimes I go back and I paint things like that, It's just as easy. It's just, I don't know, I'm just not going for that as much anymore. But yeah, I used to do lots of really intense ones. I mean, you could paint this one like that very easily. I wish I had time, like in a workshop or something. I'll do a demo each morning, and one of the days I do one like that, and then each one will be a different lesson or a different approach, so you don't come away thinking this is the only way to work. We'll do one that's real impressionistic color. We'll do one like I used to paint like that. Sometimes I paint those again. I don't know, just lately I've been really more into subtlety, grays, really studying that. I feel like, it's really not any, thing wrong with those. It's just, I don't know, I just kind of am more interested in something different right now. In another couple years, who knows, I might be doing them, real impressionistically or back that way. So again, these demos. I really, somebody had asked me about that before, because when people have come sometimes see me in my studio, like, wow, you're just so quiet in your studio, and if somebody interrupts you, you just totally stop everything, It's like, I'm surprised in your demo that you're talking the whole time, and wouldn't you do a better demo if you didn't talk, you know? And it's like, and it's like, yeah, I would, but I don't think anybody would really learn anything from it, you know? Really, mainly what it does is slow me down. It doesn't really make me paint worse. It just, a 3-hour demo basically comes out looking the same as the ones that I do. Like I have some there that were hour and a half paintings, like the nude figure and stuff. So they come out basically to that same simplicity. It's not that I'm painting mistakes. It just slows me down more, you know. And so they come out more simple. Which is interesting because some of my favorite paintings that I've done, just a few of them were demos, and so it's kind of surprising, you know. It's like maybe I should have people ask me questions in my studio all the time.
What kind of easel do you use?
I have like one of those Hughes easels, those counterbalanced ones that you get from Wind River, was it Wind River Arts or whatever? There's a link to Wind River Arts on the links page. And they sell panels, they sell easels. It's the same one Scott Christensen uses, a lot of people. It's just counterbalanced, so you can just lift it up, move it over. You know, it just, you can have a huge painting on it, and it's weighted in the back, and it's on rollers, so you don't have to crank things. So I can just, with my hand, I can just lift it all the way up and be working on the bottom, and then just lift it down, move it. It just floats completely. So, okay, you tell me if I get something wrong here, you guys.
I have a question about, I can't see from this angle, but you know, in the nose, the end of the nose, you had that original broad stroke that you were trying to
Yeah,
make.
yeah.
Is it still there?
No, it's gone. I had to put other bigger strokes over there to kind of refine it. Yeah, that was I still have some of it in there, but yeah, I've gone over it with some more shapes. Something like the nose, it's hard to, it was a nice stroke, but it was too, the edges and things really need to be, because there's so much soft edges and things, it really need to be adjusted. But some of it's still there. Most of this right here, this part of the nose, I'd say those big strokes are only left really here. There's big strokes left in the eyes that you can see. So you try and keep as many of them as you can, but the most important thing is getting it correct. So, and like I said, like with that one of Sue that I did, it's a balance. You get to the point where, because you don't want it to also be just technique-y, just about those strokes. It has to be about getting this correct. So like with Sue, I had to paint so many little strokes, and getting it, when I finally got that painting right, correct, I'd lost all of the life to the brushwork. So that's why I had to redo the whole painting. And then it was maybe just because I practiced it. Maybe I should always do the painting first once completely and then redo it, and I'd be like a golf stroke or something, and then I would be ready to do it again. That would really slow my progress down in painting, that's for sure. My galleries would not be happy about that. And then if it gets too much, if say I would get to where I think that nose was too noodled, then I would just redo it with bigger strokes, yeah. This is very fun. Yeah, talking I don't do much in the studio, but we mostly listen to like books on tape or NPR or music while we paint, so I listen to tons and tons of books on tape. No, not really, surprisingly not. I think maybe that part of my brain I'm not using when I'm painting or something, but no, I listen to just hundreds of books on tapes. I listen to so many of them. It's so nice because they have so many good ones now. They've got all the history. We've got the whole Will Durant series on tape, the history of civilization. I would just listen to the Alexander the Great one and all the classics, science ones. Harry Potter is a great one. Our models love that, and several of our models. And they'll come back, like the one model came every Sunday for like a year, and so she listened to the whole Harry Potter series in that time. So we would just leave it in the same place, and then she would.
Such a good narrator.
Oh, he is the best narrator that we've come across. He's so lively. All right. So, but just so you can see, how slow and deliberate, really, you're putting your strokes down and building it, okay? One after another, measuring everything, squinting and comparing at everything, and then slowly it can start to look human, but you don't think about that when you're painting it. Sometimes at the end it doesn't look human either, but hopefully it eventually does. Now also, one thing I wanted to point out, keep thinking of things to tell you. Now you see this dark I'm putting down here? This is one I was comparing my dark inner hair to, in the stuff in here. These values in the nose and lips, even though this is a small head, well, actually, especially since it's a small head, the smaller these darks get, like if you see some of Zoran's paintings, the smaller the head gets in the composition. If he's doing a very small head, you'll see those darks in the nose and mouth and eyes get really lighter and lighter and lighter because they're so small in comparison to the big areas of darks. Now, if I were doing this as a life-size portrait, these darks inside the nostrils and mouth, since they would be kind of bigger, relatively bigger, they would probably go a little darker. They still wouldn't be as dark as this, but since I have such big areas of dark, now if her head was down this small and we're doing this whole scene, you wouldn't even have probably these darks in here. It would just be the dark of this side of the face because it would get so small. That happens. That's like just a visual effect. Think about if you're doing a landscape, okay, and you're doing tree branches that go out across the sky, okay. A lot of you have probably painted that, and you know what I'm talking about, where the thicker trunk, even though the trunk and those thin branches are the same color, since they're against the light sky, as they get thinner, you actually have to mix a lighter color. It's the same thing with these darks. If they're small, surrounded by light here, they're going to visually look lighter when you squint, and so you need to kind of keep them down. All right. Are you guys falling asleep yet?
No.
I'm sure some of you are.
Do you think it's bad to use any umbers, either raw or burnt umber,
No.
in a face?
No, not at all. I don't see why. Any burnt sienna, orange, yellow, ochre, green, all umbers, those are all just basically convenience colors. They're things that you can mix, so you don't have to have them, but there's nothing wrong with using them. You just don't want to use colors that are like fugitive, like something that's, they're going to crack or is not going to be permanent. But no, there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion. I mean, I hear lots of every workshop really. I've got half the class saying, but we were taught that black was absolutely evil, and I'm like, well, I mean, I can see why people will misuse it, but used correctly, it's just a grade blue. It's like, well, did you like Sargent's work? Did you like Zorn? They used black, so it must have worked, A lot of people misuse black, and probably the reason why a lot of teachers will say that and stuff is because black really used by itself, alone, usually doesn't work. Like you see with Dan, when he would ask about the darks, he'd always say he was mixing black with some transparent oxide red or some alizarin. Because it needs to be warm, because those deepest dark accents, just like I'm doing in here, adding some red to them, those deepest dark accents usually have to be warm, or they look dead, they look strange. I don't know why, scientifically that is, but they do in a painting look weird. And so if you use black by itself without mixing some warmth into it, it looks dead and bad. And so a lot of people, when you're a beginner, will use black by itself for all the darks. And so that's probably why that myth kind of started, because it's kind of an easy way for a teacher to get around that thing, rather than saying, well, you have to warm up your darks or stuff, or maybe they don't even know that rule. And so they just say, just don't use black, and it helps, it helps them solve that. But you can still mix a cool black with the blue and the alizarin and the green and all that. So it's not really a fix. You really should know the principle behind it. But yeah, no, umbers, all that. I'm just...
Richard Smith uses a very soft brush to knock down that reflection.
Yeah, he uses these Langnickel's usually. So, and we'll do that or a fan brush or something. It just depends on, if it's becoming a reflection that you don't like. But yeah, we'll do that. Like, let me make a stroke here and do that. So there's like a real glary, thick, dark. So you can just knock those strokes down a little bit and get rid of the glare. Now, for the way I work, I have to be a little bit more conscious about the direction of those, rather than with like Richard, because he works a little thinner on a slicker canvas, so it's a little easier to knock them down without affecting them. You can just lightly go over them and it gets rid of the glare. But a really thick brushworks, it's going to kind of dig into it and you can't really do it. So those I'm a little bit more conscious of that. All right. Well, let's see here. You see how I kind of work that edge? Having that paint there to work into helps me kind of get that edge. Going to do a little bit more here. There might be slight things that I'll have to come and do later, but I don't want to get too caught up in this with the time we have. And I also, just because it's a smaller, it's more about going to be a whole thing, I want to get some of these other areas simply blocked in so that I can start getting kind of that whole feel that I want to go for. That's really what this is going to be about, is more of the drama of these large shapes and this light hitting this green shawl. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think this week is so fun because you get to see all these different approaches. You can see how, like for me, I really love working into the soup of the paint. Getting my edges, and so it's a lot more about that. And you get to see, so many different approaches everybody does. I'm sure it's, just gonna leave you all just so wonderfully confused when you get home. I mean, it's just gonna be great. Be like, see, Scott said, but then, see, Dan ought to try charcoal, or Kevin's using all small brushes, Scott's using big and small brushes. What am I going to do? Kevin's more about the color and about the value. You're going to just be so confused. That's just great. Yeah. And that's the way it is. That's why it's why I hate, you just don't want people to go away thinking, seeing one demo and thinking that's the way to do it, and every painting should be done that way. It's like, well.
Is there any paintings ever copied
I haven't copied any paintings. It's a good thing you can do and learn. I actually I always liked to, rather than copy the painting, to set something up similar and try and paint it in that style, is what I had done. So I would take a Zorn and I tried to set up that same kind of lighting. Or like the one Dan did yesterday, you could set up that lighting. Look at his painting. Set it up on a man or somebody similar. Set up that same lighting and then paint it, but also be looking at his thing. Because when you copy a painting, you learn a lot, but you're not seeing the problems the artist is solving. Okay? And that's the real hard thing, is how are you solving these value problems? How are you keeping yourself squinting? So for me personally, I always liked to just set something up like what I'd seen Sargent or whatever the person I was studying, Feshen, and then try and paint it in their technique and look at it. And I learned a lot. And it's kind of like how we learned, like Richard Schmid never taught at the palette chisel, but you learned because it was almost like that kind of copying, where you were painting from the same model, the same subject, and so you're trying to solve the same problems they are. So you're working and you think, God, well, how how would you do that? How would you get that? And then you go over and see how they're doing it, just like people in the museum. It's kind of like what Kevin's trying to do with his France thing. It's not a traditional workshop. He's keeping the numbers lower to like 6 people, but it's not going to be like he's doing a demo and he's going around. You're going out and you're painting the same things. So you're trying to, it's more of an advanced way of learning. Once you've got your basics, you want to then just be trying to do the same thing somebody else is. Does that make sense? So that was always how I had copied them. But Dan's copied ones of Sargent and stuff and learned from that. It's not a bad thing to do. I just have never done that.
I know painting's your passion. Have you ever run into moments of just fatigue?
Oh yeah.
Tiredness where you just can't do it for a while?
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely take breaks. Yeah. And like I said, I didn't run into that in school because. Do you run into fatigue with painting and just kind of get tired and burned out and have to take a break? In school, we didn't run into that because it was a different kind of painting. It was just technical practice. It wasn't so emotionally draining because it was just simply, trying to get the nose to look like the nose. Somebody else had set it up for you. This kind of, the painting I do at home in the studio now is very different because you're really trying to say something. You're trying to express something. It's not just about technical stuff. And so, yeah, the creative part of it it just really drains you emotionally. And so, yeah, you'll get to the point where Sue's a little bit more steady, where she works a certain amount and she doesn't burn out as much. And then I'm a little bit where I get really excited and I'll work from morning till midnight or 2 in the morning for days and days and days until I've got it. And then maybe after a couple paintings I kind of burn out and I need to take a day or 2 off and I'll just do business stuff or read or go see a movie or something and then get my ideas. Once I get my excitement going again, then I'll go back to it. So yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was kind of feeling that way before we went to Tibet, and actually having a month of just doing sketches and photos was really nice. I actually came back really excited to paint and rejuvenated.
Did you do watercolor sketches?
No, just pencil drawings, yeah. And I actually didn't come back with any of them. I gave all of them away to people,
Moving to Tibet.
Well,
Remember to take your color.
That's right.
put your hands up for a few minutes. We'll take a break in a minute, and it'll be our last break until we finish. Isn't this fun? Let's get some of that dark background in here a little bit. And just, look and think more than you're painting. Look at the model more than at your painting. Lightest light in here. But yeah, I just love that, having all that interesting stuff underneath and being able to put one stroke over it to do the highlight. You gotta really think ahead when you do that, though, because the tendency is to want to put the highlight in first. You gotta think of that, what your goal is, what your process is. Now, a lot of people ask too about, because a lot of times when I'm working one section, especially in a big painting, maybe my darkest darks are away, and you saw on Dan how he really likes to get the darkest darks and lights in. For me, I don't do that all the time. And the way I try and handle that and solve that is I really try and make my decisions, especially in the beginning of the painting, on my palette, okay? Because even though when I start and I put that first color down, that first value down, I don't have anything on the canvas to compare it to, but I've got the full value range in the model, and I've got a full value range in my palette. So I really use my palette. I look at I think, okay, is it halfway between light and dark? If it says it's right exactly halfway, then I look at black and white as I'm mixing it. I keep looking at those on my palette until I think I've got it exactly halfway. I put it up here and it might look completely wrong on the white, but I don't let that affect me. For a long time, I'm really just making my decisions down here. That's why I have to, sometimes I do have to clean my palette, but I hate to clean my palette because it's like I've got a portrait down here. And when I see a value and I say, okay, say I go into shadow, I'm going to put a little bit of this reflected light here. I say, okay, I want that there. I go back to where I've mixed that shadow color and I mix it right next to it, and then I can compare the values. So this is a whole, so when I clean my palette off, a lot of times it's very hard for me to get going again. It takes me a little while because I'm dabbing and dabbing until I can get the right value, because I have to start checking it up here.
So do you actually mix that lightest light on your palette before you start?
No, I have white. I have white and I have black. So if my lightest light is, say, slightly darker than that, I know that. I'm thinking. Now, there's some paintings that are so extreme with that I actually will mix the colors on my palette. I will, like I did one of from Thailand of girls cutting grass in this misty thing, and the darkest dark had to be fully 3 values lighter. The absolute accent of the darkest dark, 3 values lighter. So I actually on my palette mixed a big pile of my darkest dark, and my lightest light had to be much darker too because it was all in the middle range. Then I got rid of my darks on my palette, and I just used those then to judge by. But most of the time, I don't need to do that. That was more of an extreme one. It just kind of helped me from. Otherwise, sometimes I would just start to drift darker and darker and darker, just because. And so by actually taking it off my palette and pre-mixing that. That's another thing on a big painting that you'll do, is you'll mix some big piles with a palette knife, because you have, say you were doing this and you had all this green and it was this big. You have to be mixing these greens over and over and over. And so I'll mix a few big piles of my shadow pattern and my light pattern with a palette knife on my palette, using that same thing, looking at the lightest light, darkest dark, getting it all right. Then I have a nice big pile to work with.
Scott, you didn't leave that white on your canvas for any judging.
Just didn't get to it, no.
Okay.
Oops, sorry. No, I don't really mind. I'll have white on my canvas lots of times, especially a bigger painting, and I just ignore it. All right, let's get some of this background in here. Now I need a little clean spot, so I pull out my handy extra palette space. I had this made for me from another artist. I traded him a portrait for it. See, because they have the easel pals, but none of them have these spaces. So I can, when I'm doing big paintings, especially outside, then I can have more palette mixing room, but I also can get 2 12 by 16 panels under here, so I can have a place to carry them when I go out painting. I don't know why they don't do that on the actual easel pals. It adds almost no weight or size to it. It seems like the most obvious thing to me, but, and that way then you can just have a clean spot and don't have to clean my palette off just to do this. You can put your hands down for a minute. Some of this richer dark in here. This will start to really separate her and pull her forward a bit from the background. Get a little bit more blue in some of that stuff. Now you can do this with a brush or a palette knife or anything. It doesn't really matter. It's just getting getting the right value and shapes and edges. And, and then sometimes you just choose to use a palette knife or a brush because of variety reasons, or just seems to, like for this, for me a lot of times what I try to do in my paintings is to try and go for kind of a counterpoint between the tightly rendered areas and then other areas that are really abstract, and they still are representing what I see out there, but they become more and more simple and abstract, and it's almost like more of an abstract painting. And so that, just like in music, when you have a really soft area, those cymbal crashes are so much more powerful than if you had cymbals the whole time. So in this, if you have some really bold, loose areas, those subtle, really worked out areas will look so much more subtle, and a tightly done area with some areas that are loose just looks even more tight and more realistic. And the same thing with edges and with colors. That's why, really colorful paintings sometimes, be surprised at how much gray there is around that color. It makes that color look brighter. Since I'm working the edge, there's so many ways of using the palette knife. You can scrape things, you can smush them together, and I want to kind of lose that edge, and up here I want to have a little bit more of a sharper edge. So this is the fun part. This is the part you came to see, right? How to do the background, just like yesterday's question. Now, and sometimes, what I'll do is I've got an area that has, I'm totally using what you see up there. And when you ever have a big flat area, there's got to be some kind of movement. Now, like for me, when I'm looking at it, probably because this light is here, it's kind of moving from a little lighter to darker. So look for some sort of transition, either in color or value. Don't make any big areas just flat, I mean, sometimes you can get away with it, like if it's like just all dark, like something like, a dark, big, huge background. But even then, you're usually going to have some kind of variety in there. This is the fun part, isn't it? Every part's the fun part, I guess. But I love these big, bold things. Once you've done all the hard work, then you can, then you can get some of these in. And sometimes some of these strokes, these highlights and stuff, are what everybody looks at, are the color accents. But it's all the other hard, subtle stuff that really is what makes the artist, makes those strokes work. Now, you had a question about lighting. You were asking about how to light things, and a particular model you had that was very dark-skinned with a traditional type costume. And go ahead and put your hands up. I'm going to kind of do them now. Now, I love lighting, and I took several lighting classes. I took photography and stuff at film school, after art school, so I could learn cameras and lighting. And I took film cinematography. I took the whole program. And so lighting is just a vast subject. And you should look at books. You should practice in your studio. You should just move things around. Lots of times I'll take the light when you're getting a new model. I take the light off of the thing. Well, before you guys came in, I had our model looking, slowly turning her head to the left and to the right and back and forth. I mean, she was probably thinking we were going crazy. We moved the light all over these different places to see what it looked like on her face. Everybody's different. Lots of times I'll take the light off of it, and with a new model, I'll just move it all around her face, really walk around so that you're really seeing what does it look like from underneath, from the side. Experiment. I can't tell you what the best lighting will be for your particular model because it's totally different for all model. Now, you asked about that halo type lighting that I've done in some paintings. How do you get that where it's kind of like, it's not like backlighting, it's like almost like haloing all around, okay? Now the way I do that in the studio with the cool light is we have the big north window behind the model, and we have her stand forward maybe about 3 feet, and then I put a screen right just behind her with a black background on it. So the light is coming from basically above and all 3 sides. And that's how you get that effect that you've seen in several of the paintings that I've done with that kind of lighting. Somebody else asked about how do we get that, when we do those paintings where we have the cool light and then the warm light hitting intensely behind, what do we light our canvas with when we're painting it? What we do is we use the north lights as the cool light source, and we have a spotlight hitting the model from like kind of the kicker light, and then we turn our easel so the north light is lighting our canvas, the same as lighting the model. Okay. I've seen other studios where people set up for their lights that are lighting their actual painting. They set up cloths that hang down so that they don't hit the model. That works really good too.
I have an anatomy question.
Sure.
Her left arm that you're looking at, to me, doesn't look like it would attach to the elbow and shoulder.
Which one? This one here?
No, the other one.
Oh yeah, I haven't got to that yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're definitely, that's just a block-in stroke. Now, one of the reasons too why when I do something like this with posing, I don't do any sorts of detail. Unless I were to draw it out in real detail, then I would do that. But generally, I just indicate it very vaguely, because every half hour it's going to change. And so you notice how I will only do hands, I will only start them at the beginning of the session generally, because they're going to stay pretty consistent for this time. And I'm going to do them very loosely, but their position will change so much in between sessions that you don't want to tackle something like the hands, especially held like this. You don't want to try and tackle them over several sessions. You need to really nail them down, at least the drawing and everything, one time. So this is just vaguely do it. Now, when I get down there, I'll start to draw this out and get this more correctly. And it'll be very loose and indicated. But, yeah, don't commit to something like that, because same thing with hair and with cloth. You know, block this in, but only in one session really try and really put in your details.
Are you ever going to do a book on one thing? I know you've done one with
Probably sometime, but yeah, right now we just want to really kind of get good, try and practice, you know. And yeah, I just that was it's just a lot of work doing those. It takes a lot of time. So sometime, right now we're just kind of trying to, you know, by putting demos and things on the website, kind of try and do that. But yeah, that's someday I will. But yeah, it is a lot of work. There's so many good books out there, anyways, already. I'll just be repeating what everybody else says. Yeah, that's right. We have a lot of people who print out our whole website, and they'll have it bound, and they come to the shows and have us sign them. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like our book. And then they'll say, when are you going to do your book or your journal as a book? You know, and it's like, well, but it's free on the website already. Why do you need it? You know? Why do we need to cut some trees down to print it? You know, but so it's kind of interesting. But no, it would be nice to have, but it's an enormous amount of work. God, just ask Kevin about his book, and they've been working on that for 3 years. Paintings are the easy part. And when you get to this point, on this, like I am on this painting, don't think that you have to finish every little bit of it. Okay? Don't rush. So many of my favorite paintings that were from the palette and chisel are ones that you feel like at the time, God, I ran out of time. You know, I never did do that. And then some paintings you think, well, I really did need more time on it. But then other ones you think, God, I am really, really glad that I didn't rush and don't try and like do something really fast and inaccurate. Try and just do what you can correctly and accurately, and then if you don't get to the rest of it, it's better to have nothing there. Sometimes when I get to the end of the painting, if I had areas that I blocked in that I never did really get to treat the way I wanted to or that they needed, I just kind of scrub them down and leave them. It's better to have something completely untreated than to have it, you know, look like, you know, you didn't really finish it. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
Mr. Parks would say, you should be very happy if you have a pair of eyes that are correct and nothing else than having, you know, a bunch of badly drawn everythings, you know. I mean, you don't have anything then. And I really followed that advice when I was in life drawing class and I started with him. I have a whole, if you go to my parents have all these life drawings, and believe me, they are bad when I started. We would do figures for 4 days, and then we would do a portrait the final day in 3 hours. And I mean, I just never thought there was any possibility of ever doing a portrait in 3 hours. And so, but I stuck to what Mr. Parks said, and I have just piles of drawings that are just eyes because I never got past them. I never got them right. And then maybe after a long period of time, I would start to have eyes and a little bit of nose, and then lips. And I mean, it really took me, you know, a couple of years before I ever really finished and got down to like the chin. I mean, I'm not just exaggerating. I mean, really, I literally have, and so does everybody who was in his class, because they really stuck to that. Don't go on till you have that area right, and that was just a great lesson.
Where did Mr. Parks teach, and is he still teaching?
He taught at the American Academy of Art in Chicago. That's who Dan had also, and he basically he died. He passed away last year, and he was in his 80s or maybe 90s. And but we still kept in contact with him and sent him all the pictures from all the shows. And he was just he taught so many good artists at the Academy. Sometimes it's amazing because you don't realize how many people went there and had him. I counted went to the salon show. I think there was like 40 artists in the show in Denver. And I counted how many people had gone to the Academy, and it was like 13 or 14 or something. It was like, but you wouldn't realize. People realize like George Carlson went there. Well, a lot of people, Richard went there. All these artists, it was amazing. And yeah, so he was just a great teacher.
Did he author any books?
No. He just taught at the Academy, and he taught in the same method that like all of the older. Bill Mosby was the famous teacher from the Academy. That's who Richard Schmid had, and Mr. Parks had Bill Mosby for many years. And when Bill Mosby died, Mr. Parks took over for him, and so that's why we learned that same kind of method, same way.
Somebody else continuing in that tradition?
Unfortunately not. No, the school got bought just after Sue finished there. It got bought by like a corporation, and that turned it into a 4-year school, and it's still called an art school, but you go for like a 4-year degree. So we painted every single day. That's all we did was paint and draw. But now you have to take all the other classes, and you're only painting and drawing a few days a week. So, and they fired all of the teachers that had been there too, because they said they didn't have accreditation. So because they're all professional artists, and so they all got fired, and they hired people who had art degrees but had never actually sold a painting, or been an artist, or gone to the Academy. So none of them had gone to the Academy either. So it's too bad.
So what do you recommend from
I don't know. I'm not really up on all the schools, unfortunately. That was the only one I knew. Palette and Chisel is an art club. So that's where we would go after school and paint. We would paint another 3-hour session after school and on the weekends. And that's where, and then after we were in school for a while, Richard Schmid had moved back to Chicago, and he started painting there with us. And so it's just in a club. But now they have a lot of classes there because of what's happened to the Academy and stuff. A lot of the teachers actually who used to teach at the Academy now teach at the Palette and Chisel. And so it's probably a better place to go than the Academy, but it's really still not as good as the Academy used to be, as far as being able to be really structured and disciplined. But you can go there and you can take lots of classes and stuff. So I gotta leave myself time to really do some of these fun things here. All right. Yeah, and if they get tired, go ahead and put them down and move them back up. Yeah. Okay. Good. But that's an interesting thing too. Mr. Parks was such a great teacher and motivator, everything. Just made class fun, just everything. And he never would show us his work. I never saw his work until after I finished there, because he didn't want you to be copying him or to be overly influenced. So he brought in millions of videotapes, books, and so you could really see how all the different possible ways that you could work were. And, and he's not a famous artist, so if he were to teach at the Scottsdale Art School, nobody would probably have taken his class. But he's a better teacher than any of us, and, he's taught all these famous artists. That's the thing, being a good artist is a certain talent, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're a good teacher. And Mr. Parks was a great teacher. He was just a great teacher. That was his gift and his talent, and, it's just a different thing. It doesn't necessarily mean because you know how to paint you can actually explain what you're doing or get it across or be nice, and I mean sometimes that's a big part of it, is just being nice and being able to motivate people to make it fun and exciting and say, wow, this is, it's just fun. I want to paint. I want to be here all the time. Yeah, no, he's a great painter.
Choose an artist?
Well, yeah, that would be impossible probably to be as good an artist as a teacher he was, because he was just, you're talking about like sergeant of teaching, but he was a great painter, but not, he didn't really, didn't pursue galleries. He was a commercial artist. He worked in a studio in Milwaukee, and the artists at the academy when I was there, they only came in a few days a week, because they wanted professional artists, and they're not going to just come in every day. So he was an illustrator, a commercial artist, and then he also painted was his passion. And put your hands up again. Let's get this fold in here. So yeah, no, but he was, but he was a really great artist. He just, but he didn't want to have his students just think that's the only way to do it, and to have them. That happens a lot, where teachers teach a certain way, and that people think, or the teacher will even tell you that's the only way to do it. You get a whole bunch of people who are doing exactly the same thing.
And they begin to look like they teach you their work.
Yeah, I mean, that was what Mr. Parks wanted you to learn, is the basics, but he also wanted you to learn how to, do your own thing. It's funny how in these demos, it's just maybe whenever knowing how much time I have, I just seem to always do it within that time. You get just used to it. It's like if I had 2.5 hours, it would just be, probably maybe I would just have taken less talking breaks. But, yeah. It was also very important at the academy, just being around other students who were so excited and motivated about painting. Everybody fed off each other, and certainly there were probably days when I wouldn't have gone to the palette chisel because I was tired or whatever, but boy, when you got everybody else going, you just don't want to miss anything, you don't want to be, it just gets you going there. And Mr. Parks used to say that he taught so many years there, seen so many famous artists, that he used to say that he never saw one artist go there and become great by themselves. It was always a group. It was always like 2 or 3 or 4 just feed off each other and become great, and then there'd be a gap of years where there would really be nobody, and then there'd be another group sometime. You never saw one by themselves. It always had to have that, that working together, pushing each other. That's why forming art groups, having people come over to your studio the best you can, painting with really good people so that you push each other, is so important. Yeah, and also one thing that you can do on these, which I do all the time, is I'll get everything. You try and get everything right in it, and then you might still have refining that you feel like you need to do, and I'll just take the digital shot, and the model goes, and I'll work another hour or 2 on it, and it's more about reworking the brushwork or something, or trying to get the subtleties or working your edges. But just make sure you get all the values and colors and everything right. This one I don't think needs it because I really want that loose feel with this here. But that's what painting from life is. You're putting down these notes, and they're very honest. It's just about capturing what you see. I rarely, when I'm painting from life, I rarely change things or try and say, like with the work in the studio, I'm doing a lot of that, where I'm using several photos, trying to get just the right thing. But from life, I really see that as my study time. To just really study nature and really just paint exactly what I see, and just copy it, and it looks beautiful. I mean, some people will say, well, and when I remember sometimes when you talk about measuring, George Carlson had said this when he was teaching a workshop too, where he was teaching people how to measure proportions, on the sculpture, with the calipers. Or when we do head measuring, people have said that. They say, well, I don't want to copy it, And it's like they think that you have to, if you actually paint what you see, you're not putting anything creative into it, and that's just not the case. Well, we got 8 minutes. Quick and get. But what I want you to come away from these is these ideas. You know, this is the same thought process that goes into even the most complicated painting that might take me weeks. These principles of going from larger to smaller shapes. Squinting and comparing for the values. See some palette knife work, some variety of edges. These are the things that matter. And that are universal no matter if you're working, whatever medium you're working in. Whatever subject. So I'm the last demoer left here. Everybody's gone home. So this is your last chance. If you have any last minute questions, just go ahead. Everybody can think tomorrow on the plane. I knew I should have asked that. What are you motioning for? What do you need? You're doing a great job. Just excellent modeling. You can have another career here. A little bit the detail on the eye. That's our center of interest here. The one place I'm going to really get a little bit of detail. Everything else is very simple. Just get a little bit of a darker, it's kind of a warmer, adding a little bit of a kind of a reddish so it's not too blue in there. Bit of that highlight there. You guys must be really ready to eat and get home and paint, huh? I'm excited to get home and paint too. Oh, it depends if it's a study or not. Like this is a 12 by 16, so I charge a lot less for it because their studies like $1,500 usually. The studio ones are, I have a whole list. I'm always drawing blanks in the names, but the studio ones, I don't know, maybe $3,400 or something for 12 by 16. You don't have to quote me. Just look on the website. I can't remember. Because they change every like 6 months. They go up a little bit, so I forget. But basically, I have two lists. And I just give them to the gallery so that they can explain them to collectors and stuff. Sometimes they'll go up a little bit more if I'm getting a really expensive frame for it. But generally, I just have two prices. I have ones for the studies, which are just 2 or 3 hours. And then a studio 12 by 16, I might spend a couple days, 2 or 3 days on. So I have two prices, and that's why, you know. So, and people understand that. The main thing is you just want to stay extremely consistent with your prices for collectors, because you just don't want somebody buying one thing at one place for a certain price and then going somewhere else and then seeing that it's priced lower here, because then they'll feel hurt. You know, their feelings will be hurt, and they'll resent it, and they'll feel like they were cheated. And you have to always try and think long term. You know, when you're talking about galleries and all that sort of thing, just think long term. You know, if you make a couple extra dollars on one thing, you know, that's just won't help you, because if you get a reputation for that, it's just. So pricing is just such a weird thing. It's like I really don't spend much time. We just write down the list, and as things go up, we just keep it on there, and we just go by that. Like I said, like some of the ones I put in the show here, I went down like a couple $100 because I put just a really simple black frame on it. So that's where it will slightly get adjusted sometimes. If I put a really just simple frame on it, or if I put a really expensive, maybe it'll go up a little or down that. We are almost done here. I'll get a little bit of that bright blue in. And like this blue here now, I'm going to put in here. It's kind of a greenish. See, I don't want to use pure blue because it has to have a little bit of that yellow in it, and you can see it from the light. So we'll get a little bit of that yellow so that it'll stay within in harmony. Okay. And then I'm going to get a few of my last little accents in the hair. You can put your hands on, I'm sorry. So you got an arm workout too. This workshop.
How long did it take before you felt like you could mix colors professionally?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I even feel like it now, but yeah, it takes a long time, you know, because most of the time, to mix colors proficiently, he's asking how long did it take you to feel comfortable. The real problem is that you think that your problem is your colors mixing, but it's usually still your values that you're having trouble with. But you don't know that, and so you're struggling with color when it's really a value problem. And so most people I have in classes I have a lot of people who are beginners who are at that level. You guys are mostly advanced, so I doubt there's as many people at that level, but having that problem anymore. But it's usually the values. You know, people will come into the class and say, I want to learn how to do color, and they look at their paintings and it's all about value. You know, that's usually what the big problem is. Not going dark enough, not squinting, and you think it's the color, but it usually, unless you have your temperature way off. I mean, these colors, it could be anything, you know. And I'll go into the end of the painting, I'll go in and I'll add little notes. You'll see, if you see some of the close-ups on the website, real little streaks of maybe a little bit of a blue or green or yellow here, that you can just play with the colors once you get all that values. It's just not that hard. But I thought it was. So it really wasn't until I really started getting a handle on squinting and comparing in values that my colors started to look anything like real colors or good colors. So I hope that answers your question. One of the things I had trouble, and I learned color a lot more in life drawing because I did that for 3 years before I started painting. And so the way I really learned color, so that's like my highest highlight there on the hair. I'm kind of waiting for there. Great hair. You can just have so much fun with all those things. Mr. Parks, I learned with pastel, and Mr. Parks would, when I first started doing them, I started trying to get bigger and bigger pastel sets. And, all right, I think that's good. Well, you can stop. I'm going to talk for a minute here, but you can get down, yeah. Thank you, guys. Wanted to just tell you about that with color, because this is a good thing, and I won't be distracted when I'm painting. This could be a good exercise for you, too. Now, pastel's a great way to learn color because you're forced to mix on the paper if you're using a simple set. When I first started doing pastels and doing color, I didn't know anything about mixing, and Mr. Parks told me about it, but very thick skull, it took a long time to get in there. So I kept trying to get bigger and bigger pastel sets. I was like, I don't have that flesh color. I don't have it in my box, you know. And so I go, I'll buy a bigger one, a bigger one, bigger one. Mr. Parks would keep saying, no, you mix them. You have to mix them on the canvas. Let the eye mix them. So finally, in frustration, he took my big set away, put it in his locker, and he gave me one of those dime store sets that he got with like pure yellow, red, blue, white, and black. And he said, you work with this for a couple months, and maybe I'll give you your big set back. and I was like, ah. Oh. So I was like, all right, fine. I don't see any of these colors up there, but I'll just play along, you know. And he did those kind of things to me. But after working for it with a few months, I really did learn about cross-hatching the red, yellow, blue, the white to make it lighter, or the black to make it darker, which is exactly how they make pastels. They take those pigments and they mix them, and then they bind them. And so, but you can do it visually and mix it, and that's a great way to learn to mix color. And one other thing that he did, I went through another stage where, and a lot of people have this happen with their color, is you get to where you start getting so sensitive to a certain color. One of the artists there has started to do all her paintings green. Everything was green. And you just, once your eye starts getting so sensitive, you think you see that color everywhere. And it happened to me with pink. And everything was red and pink. Everything was, you know. And I didn't think I saw any ochres or yellows or blues or greens. And so Mr. Parks took all the reds and pinks out of my box, literally. I mean, literally, picked them all out. And again, I thought, well, I'm going to just have to make up the color. Fine, I'll do the values, but I'll just use, you know, ochres and reds and greens and blues. But lo and behold, as I started using those, and since I didn't even have the red to start putting on my thing, I just started to see those colors up there. I started getting more sensitive to seeing them. And so that can happen to you with colors, and that's why sometimes I will, like I said, use the different limited palette combinations can get you out of a color rut. So, anyways, hopefully that'll answer your question. I guess we're done. All right.